So what will be covered? So first of all, very excited with this one. We've got a special guest. We've got Lucy Woodhead, software engineer from Hark. She's actually going to be stating her IT journey and experiences. So it's a really interesting talk from Lucy. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then we're going to follow it up with what is the foundation level IT professional certification and why you should actually take it. And then we're going to go through some sample lessons, which you'll get from the certification. So there's 5 lessons here. There's methodologies and development lifecycle, there's IT support, there's testing foundations, manual testing activities, and intro into automation. And then finally, we'll conclude with a summary and some new course information coming out as well. So first of all, let's be inspired. So yeah, we got Lucy Woodhead, software engineer from Hack, and yeah, thank you, Lucy, first of all, for volunteering some of your time.
Thank you.
An insight of your IT journey. So yeah, thank you very much, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I might need to ask you to stop sharing your screen briefly.
Yep, that is true.
I'll take over.
Here you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll just bring up my slides. And if you could just give me a sign that you can see, that would be great.
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay then, let's get started. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on this evening. It's really exciting to be able to share my journey. And I'm a software engineer at Hark, which is a startup based in Leeds, but I haven't always worked in software engineering. So it's actually quite interesting to reflect and also hopefully inspire other people to potentially make that move in the future. So I'm just going to move on to the next bit. So here is my timeline. And as you can see, there's a mixture of things there. And I'm going to wind back a bit to 2015. So I graduated with a degree in music from Durham. Piano was my life, basically. I really enjoyed music. It made so much sense to go and study that. And when I finished, I wanted to find a graduate scheme in the project management arena, mainly because I had skills in teamwork, also working on my own, and just general organisation. So I really enjoyed that role. But the interesting thing for me was that it was all project-based, but within the digital space. So I hadn't really done much of that before, but I was working alongside teams who were doing coding, and I would go over and ask them, what are you doing? What is that? And they'd say, oh, this is JavaScript, this is C#. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of that before. I wasn't taught it at school. What a shame. And over time, my interest grew. Anyway, I moved on to another role at Heineken, and that was more specialized in the online space, websites. And it was really fascinating to learn about how algorithms can really determine how much revenue you can make. Those algorithms and just things that you can tap into to get more buy-in from users. So the online experience was becoming a lot more important to me. Anyway, the year after, I decided to go traveling. So I had a bit of a gap year. And towards the end of that, I knew my time was coming up and I had to go back, but I didn't really want to go back to the general project management sphere. I wanted to do the very specific task of building the software that I'd seen other people do. I think it might have actually stemmed from jealousy, which sounds a bit weird. So then I went to North Coders, and that was a 3-month intensive boot camp. And I learned full stack, which is both back-end and front-end systems. And I was really lucky because after I graduated from there, I had multiple interviews and I was able to pick the place that I wanted to work at, which is Hark. So Hark are a business that are in the IoT space. So IoT is Internet of Things. So essentially, we connect sensors to hardware and we collect data out of those things. So think like fridges, so temperature, humidity, vibration, all kinds of things. And this can be applied to many industries. That data is streamed up to the cloud and then presented on a platform. And the platform is what I help to build. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm coding new features, whether that be a search bar or some new buttons or something like that. So I personally find that really interesting. And I'm also going to explain a little bit more about life at Hark, just to emphasize how much I like working in the technology area. So this is the building that I normally work in, obviously not at the moment. Here are some of the humans that I work with. And here are some of the dogs that I work with. They're very fun, and they certainly do help me to get through the day coding. So that's really fun. So then I just want to move on to some of the key reasons that I really like working in the technology sector, and also why I think you will. So one of the things that I seem to have understood from all of my friends and also from my own company is that a lot of places allow flexible working. And flexible working means that you can well, it's up to you when you get your work done. So for example, 8 till 4, that represents someone from my team who picks up his children after school, obviously normally not in COVID. 9 to 5, that's me, pretty bog standard. And then 10 to 6 could represent someone who just has some morning engagements, so not able to start. We do have core business hours, that's 10 till 4, so that's when we do our stand-ups and some of the other ceremonies, which Metis covers on the course actually. Then the second thing is learning every day. So there's always new releases, new tools and frameworks. So you're never bored. And then making cool things. So I do this both inside work and outside work. So out of work, I love to delve into things like augmented reality, just making silly apps for my friends. But please bear in mind as well, I literally couldn't code a year and a half ago. So all of this has just happened recently. And I'm here to prove that if I can do it, you can too. So the tech community is a really important aspect as well. I think that I've relied quite heavily on some tech groups to inform me of new opportunities, and I've actually gained a new position voluntary, which is with AI Tech North. So I'm really helping to pioneer that and also to get more women into tech. One of the other things I really love is the fact that you can own your development. There's so many different routes that you can take in tech. You might have heard of DevOps, cloud computing, all that kind of stuff. And really, like you can choose whatever. It's just sometimes knowing where to get started can sometimes be the problem. And then finally, making a difference. So I know that in my work, the code that I'm producing is helping to solve human and environmental problems. And by that I mean we're helping to save energy, and in doing that, we're actually saving companies a lot of money. So that's really satisfying to know. So here is my team on a social, a couple of different socials, escape games, paintballing and the like. This is also another good perk of working in tech. There's a lot of fun. And some of the community activities. So you'll have heard of things like hackathons. There's a couple of communities around Leeds as well that I like to be involved with, Leeds Digital Drinks, Tech Show North, and we actually held our own Energy Innovation Summit recently. So some of the challenges then, I briefly touched on this before. There's so much that you could learn. There's so many different areas, and sometimes it's really difficult to know where to start. I think one of the reasons why I chose to retrain with an actual provider was because although there's so many free courses online, sometimes it's tricky to know exactly where to start. And I think that's actually a touching point on why Metis is so good, because it does actually really help you with that initial leap into the tech sector. The second point is gender balance. So I'm actually the only female engineer in my team. Luckily not in the whole company, but I think wouldn't it be nice to actually achieve that 50-50 split, which we are trying to get in the industry. So that's something I really try to pioneer as well. And I do that through a lot of the different communities I spoke of earlier. And then also security. So you'll have heard of lots of breaches recently. You'll have had emails saying that, databases being leaked, all that kind of stuff. And I think that does actually go hand in hand with testing. So again, Metis covers that. So the challenges can actually be resolved. So here's some of the tech that I use on a day-to-day basis. On the left, it's all the development stuff. So JavaScript and C# are my main go-tos. Then some tools in the middle, and they might sound a bit alien, Azure and Teams, but these are all part of the way that we work and how we delegate work to each other. And it's actually really important. We're all heavily dependent on using these tools. And then on the right, you might see some testing libraries there, but they actually sound like coffees. But these are all essential parts of my work that enable me to make sure that the things that the users are typing in align with what I want them to type in. So I'll just move on to the next thing. Just something that I spoke of earlier, women in tech. If you are a graduate and you're a bit intimidated by the thought of going into tech or whatever, please reach out to me, because I would love to chat to you, talk through my experiences. And they've actually been largely positive. I've got a really nice team. They're very respectful of me, and they really support me in doing a lot of this outreach work as well. So yes, please do get in touch. Now I'd like to speak about something that I achieved very recently, which is my Metis certificate. So this was back in April as part of Leeds Digital Festival. I took part in the training, and a lot of people were like, well, you don't need to do this. You're already a software engineer. But what's really interesting is it's never a bad thing to consolidate your knowledge and also learn other things that you may not have learned like the first time around necessarily, or maybe not have a true academic understanding of. So for me, the course was, I actually learned so many new things and consolidated the things that I thought I already knew. So that was really useful. And just to delve into that a little bit more, I've picked out 4 key highlights from my experience. So the first one is the IT support. So you do a bit of role play as part of the course, and I actually have a direct example of how that helped me. So someone in my team was actually off on holiday, and I often answer the phone, and they were asking for help, and I was in a bit of panic. But actually, I remembered, no, we've got this knowledge base. I can do this, and I think for me, this course helped to instill that confidence that yes, I can do things, I can help the people that are using our software. Second of all, the ways of working. I mentioned earlier, there's so many different things, agile and waterfall. And if you can really understand how a workplace operates, then it puts you in really good stead when you're going for your interviews, and how you can explain that you understand things like the Kanban boards and things like that. So again, really good knowledge there. And then upskilling on testing. Of course, I can already do some basic testing, but learning other frameworks has been really, really useful, and also for some of my personal projects. And the course also homes in on like the benefits and some of the cons of manual and automated testing. So two different areas again that you could go into. And then finally, I believe this is a bit of a coming soon sort of thing, the talent pool that Metis are creating. So I'm obviously not looking right now for a new role, but I think it's amazing for people to know that after taking this course, they could be matched up with potential employers who already understand the value of the course and already know what skills you can bring to the team because you've taken this. So yeah, my experience was very, very positive. I wouldn't hesitate to offer it to recommend it to anyone else, and especially to graduates. I know my own sister has also passed this course, and it has helped her massively in her job search. So again, yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I'm actually going to pass back to Maya now to talk a little bit more about this. But thank you so much for having me. If you do want to reach out and talk a bit more, I'm on these channels that you can see on the screen, and I really do hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you very much for that, Lucy. That was, to be fair, you've done so many impressive things, but there's one question I have to ask.
Absolutely.
You're allowed dogs in the office? You
Yes.
get, oh my God. I mean, that is, oh, that's just amazing. I
It's
mean,
the dream, wasn't it? Yeah.
that's just amazing. This dogs just make you happy.
Yeah, a
That's
bit of an alternative office name, Barksys, because we're Hark Systems, and yeah, we've got a bit of an alternative Barksys. They take over.
no, that's cool. I mean, it's very impressive as well, seeing your journey, and like you said, me and yourself were quite similar. We didn't we'd actually start off with the coding, as we know, compared to where we are now, because of the fact that you got to start somewhere, and
Absolutely.
then you just progress, from on the job experience and things like that. What's great about IT as well is the fact that everyone is just brilliant. Everyone's willing to help each other. It's a great place to work. It's a great environment. And that's why we're trying to get everyone, trying to tell them to be involved in tech, because it doesn't even feel like work half the time. Like you said, I mean, you got dogs in the office, you got paintballing, you got hackathons, you got.
It's been fun, actually.
It is so much fun. It's like, it just doesn't feel like work. It feels like, you get the team bonding, and it's very enjoying. It's just really, really fulfilling. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but honestly, Lucy, thank you very much. And like she said, if you want to follow her, please follow her. And yeah, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm just going to present my screen just before I forget, so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about our foundation level IT professional certification, or otherwise known by its acronym FLITPC, or FLIPPC as I like to call it. So to make my life easier during the webinar, I may refer to the course as FLIPPC. So just wanted to give you all the heads up on that, basically, if you ever hear me say that. But I just want to point out the experience of our trainers in Metis, so the people behind the scenes who have developed these courses. So myself and my colleagues, we've got many years experience working in IT, and for some of the biggest names, including those you see on screen. And our skill set is a mixture of IT support, software and automation testing, development, databases, and DevOps. So you are in good hands, and getting all this IT knowledge in a short space of time is only going to benefit you. So what is the foundation level IT professional certification online course and exam bundle? I've actually realized I actually put Flip PC in the wrong section in there, but you can see why I like to call it Flip PC. So basically, what's the purpose of this? So you become a certified IT professional by taking our course, and it covers the following, as Lucy mentioned: the ways of working in IT, and that includes agile, waterfall, software development life cycles, IT support, and also software testing, including both manual and automation testing. So you'd be wondering why IT support and software testing, especially, why we're covering these areas. So in this course, it is foundation level. So think of it as an entry level into becoming an IT professional. We don't want to throw you all the really technical stuff straight away, because that's going to take time to learn. As you found out from Lucy, and as I know from my own experience, that will take time. You'll learn that from the on-job experience. I mean, take myself for example. I started off in IT support, learned some basic coding, and then I moved into a graduate scheme myself, where I learned some technical skills, and then moved into automation testing. And now I class myself as pretty techie, but that's because of the on-job experience, which helped me gain that. What you need to worry about is getting that first IT position, beating many other candidates, especially in the current climate. And that's really what this certification is trying to do. So really, when we're covering these topics, like the ways of working in IT, you need to know how this works. You need to actually be able to answer questions around that in a job interview, because they're very common. If they give you interview questions around this and you don't know how IT teams work, then it's pretty much an interview fail anyway. So really, this is a core fundamental you need to know. And then you've got IT support and software testing. So you don't need to be technical to actually start off on this. You don't even need some coding expertise to start in these roles. But what's great is that you'll develop those technical skills as you progress into these roles, just like I did. And then in addition to these roles, it does bring out the best of your other skills. People think about, oh, IT, I got to be technical, but I got to be technical. It's not actually like that. To be good in IT support, you need to be great with communication, problem solving, multitasking, and organization. When you look at something like software testing, it's building that analytical mindset. Looking at an application and think, how can you break it? And yes, you actually get paid for actually breaking stuff. And what's great is that you don't even have to fix it, and via software testing. So that's why we cover these 3 topics in this certification. And as it states on the slide, our course is in the form of a presentation slides and text notes. And in the email confirmation, when you make an order, you'll also receive access to the online practice exam and the actual online exam itself. And I'll just show you what the online course actually looks like. So basically, it looks like this, and this is what I mean when I say you've got the presentation slide and your text notes. So it just supplements each other, really. And you just go along the slides, so we're talking about your career development in IT support and testing. And then you pretty much start your lessons, give you your lesson breakdown, and then you just keep continuing, really. Read the slide, read the text along with it, and it just marries up. And what's also cool is the fact that we've also provided some practice questions for you. So for example, it's usually at the end of each lesson. So if I just go on lesson 2 and then just move back, you have some practice questions here. So you get your questions, you have a think about it, and then you just basically click on it and it will reveal the answer. So that's pretty much what's involved in our online course, basically. And like I said, you get the practice exam and the actual exam as well. So that's why it's an online course and exam bundle. And this is what's in play. It is the certification. If you gain the knowledge from the course and pass the online exam, you'll get this nice looking certificate. And you can showcase this certificate to employers to prove you have the knowledge, and that it actually adds the weight to your application. But as Lucy actually mentioned, there's also another reason why the certification is important. And that is pretty much the talent pool. And this is it. So in Metis, I've developed this 3-step plan, which is train, certify, and employ. So you actually take the course and train yourself. You pass the exam to gain your certification. That covers the certify. And then finally, it's the employ. At the end of the day, the whole purpose of all this is actually to help you gain employment. And that's where the talent pool comes in. And obviously, you can read how the talent pool works on the slide. But I mean, the main purpose of this is that we don't want to be like, we're a training provider, we're not recruiters. So you get a recruiter and we try and hassle you, say, do you want this role, a role you don't want, and we call you every day and you don't know which number it is. We don't work like that. You get your certification, you send us an email to say you want to join our talent pool, and we'll just send you a form for you to complete, and you just say which roles you like and which location. And then we actually go off to all these business clients and we just say, have you got any roles available? And based on the role and the location, basically, if it matches up with what you want, we'll just send it over to you by email, and then it's up to you. And if you think, yeah, I'd like to take this, then we proceed further. We'll forward your CVs to the clients, and then they'll take it from there. So, that's the end goal. We want to make sure that, that this isn't just, oh, I've got a nice certificate. No, the whole main purpose of all this is actually to help you gain your employment. And what's great as well is that it doesn't actually cost to actually join our talent pool. Once you've got your certificate, you just, like I said, send us an email to join our talent pool, and then you're in. So just before I'll actually go through some sample lessons, I just want to kind of show you some career development paths you might get from testing and IT support. So taking testing as our first example. So, when you start off, you're probably going to start off as a junior test analyst at the bottom here. So there's different ways to go about it. You can actually move up the testing ladder. So you can become a test analyst, senior test analyst, test lead, up to test manager. You can actually then, if you want to sidestep into a more technical role, so you can actually go into automation testing, which is something I actually specialize in myself, and move up the ladder that way. What's also really good with testing is actually you can actually move, if you want to move outside of IT, you want to go into a more sort of business sort of role, then you can actually do that as well. The great thing about testing is that you actually get this overall business knowledge. So if you want to become a business analyst, a product owner, or delivery manager, you can actually do that well. But this is just showing to you all the different development paths you can get, basically. With IT, it's not like you actually have to, you pick this position, you stay in that position. Like I said myself, I went from IT support, did a graduate scheme where there were 6 roles within that graduate scheme, and then I chose automation testing and went from there. So, it's like Lucy said, it's one of those where you keep actually you keep actually building up knowledge in everything. You don't just build up knowledge in testing. You might build up knowledge in support. You build up knowledge in development. It just all comes naturally. But like I said, this is why I want to show you testing and IT support, because it's not just easy to get into, but it also branches out to other areas as well. I mean, this is an example of IT support. So you can actually start in first line support and then actually move up the ladder to second line, to third line, and then to become an IT support manager. Or you can branch off to a different area. You could go straight into a grad scheme like I did. You could actually be a tester. You could actually go into more configuration. You can actually go into development. There's endless opportunities. Basically, but our goal is to make sure you actually take your first step into an IT career. Okay, so now that you understand what is the purpose of Flip PC and why it's important, we now can look at some sample lessons from the course, so you know what it covers before you decide if this course is right for you or not. So the plan is that I will show you the full lesson breakdown for each lesson and then go through one sample slide per lesson. So for each sample slide, I'll read some of the text notes, which you can't see on the screen. It's actually on my other monitor. But the point is that you actually be able to know, oh, okay, this is the slide. I'm reading out the text notes, and then you can actually understand how it kind of marries up together. So lesson 1, methodologies and development lifecycle. So this lesson focuses on how development teams work in IT using various methodologies and software development lifecycles. So in this full lesson breakdown, you'll actually go through 2 methodologies. Agile is actually the big one. You need to know this because it's the main one that's being used now. But to understand Agile, you actually need to strip it back and go to Waterfall and need to understand what Waterfall is. And then that'll help you understand why we're actually now moving to Agile. And then we'll look into Scrum versus Kanban. So these are both work streams that are part of Agile. And then finally, we will look into major ceremonies that take place within development teams. And ceremonies is just a fancy word in Agile, which basically means meetings. And we're going to cover one of these now in our sample lesson. So ceremonies is an Agile term that means meetings, as I mentioned, and the development team will conduct various meetings to try and help communicate timely information, bring a common goal and vision, and share team progress with all its team members. So if you look at this example of the daily scrum, or also known as stand-up, this occurs every day and it usually happens in the morning. So all members of the development team will stand up and one by one discuss 3 important factors. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And is there anything blocking you from doing your task today? So if you view the example in the slide of a tester delivering their stand-up, basically by mentioning these 3 points, you would know what did we do yesterday, what are they doing today, and is there anything actually blocking them? And that's basically what happens every day. It's just to help everyone else in the team know the progress. And then from there, we can tell, okay, yes, this is where the team's at, and this is what we're expecting. And then we have lesson 2, which is IT support. So the lesson breakdown for this is that, what is IT support and the expected skills you require? And this will be followed up with an example team structure and their responsibilities. And then finally, there's some example call logs you'll actually get in the online course where you can actually listen to some example calls and actually view the written logs per each call. So here is an example team structure in IT support. So you actually start off with first line support. So what is their responsibilities? So basically the customer contacts the first line support. The support engineer will log the details during the call and try to resolve their issue through a knowledge base. The knowledge base consists of issues, reasons, and resolutions to those issues. Basically, simply perform a keyword search and try and find the relevant article to help actually resolve the issue. The skill here is actually multitasking and the ability to listen and communicate to the customer, write down the information, then if required, look through the knowledge base to try and find a resolution. If the issue is not found in the knowledge base or a resolution cannot be reached, it is best to escalate the incident to the next level. That's when we actually move up to the second line support. So if the first line support cannot resolve the issue and it requires further investigation, that's where second line support comes in. The second line will dig deeper into the issue, viewing logs and potentially the back end of the application to see what's happening. They don't usually have any interaction with the customer unless they require more details, but the normal process is that they will update the logs asking the first line to communicate with the customer to get the relevant details they require. When they provide a fix or a temporary workaround, they will update the logs and the first line support will communicate the fix or the workaround to the customer. They're usually gatekeepers of the knowledge base. Any new issues that should be included in the knowledge base is determined by the second line. And then finally, you've got the third line support. So these are known as the specialists or gurus. If the second line cannot fix the issue, it goes to them to actually work out on how to fix the problem. As they are the last line of support, the issues they receive will be the toughest to resolve and require time to investigate. They should have all the details they require from the second line, but if not, they'll ask the first line to communicate to the customer on any info that they actually need. After they've found a fix for the issue, is communicate down the chain for everyone's knowledge, and the first line again will communicate the fix to the customer. So that is basically how IT support works. Basically, it just works as a nice linear sort of line, a nice sort of chain, basically, to go from trying to help a customer, then actually escalating if the situation gets much harder, and then obviously once we actually do have a fix, we'll just go back down the chain. Lesson 3, testing foundations. So we're moving into testing now. In this lesson, we're looking at the foundations that make up testing, the theory behind what testing is and what we as testers do in the workplace. So we'll look at an example development team structure, understand what is testing, manual versus automation testing. This is very important because in the market, these are the two major testing roles. We'll look at the different levels and type of testing performed in the workplace. And then finally, we will look at test environments. How do we actually get a feature through the test environments and into the live environment for the customers to use? So what is testing? Testing is an activity where we check if the actual result matches the expected result and that the software is defect-free. It doesn't mean we check that a software is 100% defect-free, because that's pretty much impossible, but any defects that we actually found is raised. So here's an example, pretty much as a nutshell, what is testing. We want to check that 2 + 2 = 4 in our calculator. If we test this and 2 + 2 = 5, then the actual result has not met the expected result. And that's a defect, and we actually raise it. So this is a basic example, but a tester's skill is actually thinking where these defects might be. And test is not just about trying to see if software works. It also helps determine the quality of the product, the errors, the gaps, or any missing requirements. And this is where the second example kind of gives a good idea of this. And this is actually a real life example of something I've experienced. So if you actually look in the second example, this is related to a parcel app, and this is something I actually learned from when I was actually working for a parcel company myself. So in this requirement, in this example, it says the sender of a parcel must include either the recipient's email or the mobile number. So you don't have to fill both. It's just saying either include the recipient's email or the mobile number. Now, the recipient can track their parcel through the app, but if they are logged in to the app with a different account from the one that's provided when the sender actually provides the recipient email, then what happens is that recipient actually has to then complete a mobile phone validation to be able to view the tracking details. So to give you an example of that, what it means is, let's say I want to deliver a parcel to my mum. So first of all, it says I can enter in an email or a mobile number as the sender. So I want to actually enter in my mum's email address. So let's say she had an email address, mum@gmail.com, and I decide not to actually fill in anything for the mobile number. Okay, I send that parcel off. She has her app. Now, she actually doesn't log in with the recipient email address I provided. She actually logged in with a different email address. So she probably logged in with mother@gmail.com. So what that means is, if she wants to look at that parcel, which I have placed as the recipient, mum@gmail.com, she actually has to fill in a mobile, basically validate her phone number. But here's the catch. I've not provided a mobile number. So what happens when she reached the mobile validation screen? Is it basically the mobile validation is pointless and she can bypass it, or is it always going to fail because of the fact that every time she'll try and enter in a phone number, it'll just keep failing because there's no phone number? And that's an example of where we say, testing is not about just seeing if we can break things. Even early on when it comes to gaining those requirements, we've got to make sure are those requirements, do they actually make sense? Because if not, then you can actually go back to the business and say, these requirements don't make sense. And that will make it a lot easier, because if you find it down the line, then it becomes more expensive to fix, basically. Another good process in testing that is beneficial to follow is V&V, and this stands for verification and validation. So what is verification, or if you want to verify a product? So does the product meet the requirements? Or in other words, are we building the product right? So for example, we can make sure that the calculations are correct. Like I said, like 2 + 2 = 4. So we can make sure, okay, let's make sure all the calculations are correct. So then what's validation? So validation is, does the product meet the user's needs? Or in other words, are we building the right, building the right product? So for example, yes, we can have all our calculations correct, but what happens if our calculator only provides calculations for numbers between 1 to 100? That's not really a very good calculator to use, because it doesn't actually cover all the different sums we need. So that's an example where you got to think about in testing. You got to think, is it, like as it says, are we building the right product? Based on, does it work? And are we actually building the right products in terms of, does it actually meet the user's expectations? Then we've got lesson 4. So this is actually the common activities manual testers are expected to do whilst testing. So in this lesson breakdown, we'll be looking at examples of the following activities they may do. So, which is basically how to write a test case, what's a test suite pack, how to write a defect report, and how to actually go through a test report. And then we'll actually go through an example feature and the many testing scenarios that may be associated with it. So in our sample lesson, we actually have an example defect report. So when you find a defect within an application, you'll need to raise it, and this is done by writing a defect report. And it's actually 1 defect per defect report. So on this slide, you can see an example defect. I'll actually go through the report segment by segment. So you get the bug ID, and that's pretty much an auto-generated ID, basically based on the application you're using, that actually helps create these defect reports. And then you have a bug summary. So basically, what is the title of your defect? And then we have on the right-hand side, priority and severity. This is very important to know in testing. So what is the difference between the two? So priority is what impact does this defect have on the business? And severity is what impact does that defect have on the system? So if you look at this in this example, I'll see what this defect is. Basically, the user is unable to log in with valid credentials. So not being able to log into an application has a high severity on the system because users cannot complete transactions without logging in. But it also has a disastrous effect against the business as well, because obviously if people can't log in and let's say they can't make any transactions or anything, but the business is not making any money. So it's also high priority as well. To actually help give some examples, basically as a general rule of thumb between priority and severity, I've actually provided some examples here as well. So as you said here, this is an example of a high priority and high severity, an error which occurs on the basic functionality of an application, which will not allow the user to use a system like the one we just mentioned. So that's a high severity, high priority. Now, let's say if you've got something that's high priority, so something that has a major impact on the business, but has a low severity, so it doesn't have much effect on the system. So, for example, a spelling mistake that happens on a cover page or a heading or a title of an application, in terms of a system, a spelling mistake doesn't affect the system. But the problem is if it's done in a particular area which might put people off, like a heading, for example, if I see a company's name on their heading and it's misspelled, that's going to put me off. I'm actually thinking, do they provide a good service if they can't even spell their name right? So it's one of those where it actually affects the reputation of the business. So that's an example of why we say it's a high priority, because it has a big impact against the business, but it's a low severity because it doesn't have much of an impact on the system. And then we have high severity and low priority. So an error which occurs on the functionality of an application for which there's probably not a workaround or anything like that, but it's used it's in part of the system which is not used very often. So I'll give you an example. It's like if you go onto a website and you might go onto a sitemap. So a sitemap link is broken. Now, it does have a high severity. It does affect the system because as a user, you can't access the sitemap. But in terms of the business, it's a low priority because it's not really going to affect their reputation. Not many people use a sitemap. So if it was more like, if I click the login link and I can't access the login, that becomes a high priority because it's like, wow, everyone's going to click on that and they can't actually access the login. But a sitemap isn't really going to affect the business, but it does have a high impact on the system because it's broken functionality. And then finally, we have pretty much the lowest of lows, the low priority and the low severity. So that's pretty much any cosmetic or spelling issues. So probably something that's in a paragraph or in a report, as long as it's not in like a big section, like a heading or a title or something. If it's just like a paragraph and there's one typo, I feel that that's going to be not really have much impact on the business because, first of all, how many people will be able to see that in a big piece of text? How many people will actually read that piece of text? And it's definitely not going to have an impact on the system. So that's an example of low priority, low severity. And then when we go back into the defect report, so we have the reported by and the assigned to. So the reported by is the person who raised the defect, and the assigned to is the person who's dealing with the defect. So within the assigned to, the defect will switch in different hands. So when you raise the ticket as a tester, you usually raise it to the product owner, and they'll review it and decide when this should actually be fixed. And they'll actually use the priority and severity levels as a guide. That's why priority and severity is actually very important, and why it's very important for you to know this. And then once they've done that, a developer will pick this up and fix the defects, and then they'll change the assigned to themselves because they're the ones that are fixing it. And then once it's ready to test, either the tester who reported the defect or another tester, they'll assign it themselves and they'll retest the defect to make sure the fix has actually worked before moving it into done. So that's pretty much an example of how it can actually switch hands multiple times. And then you've got the date is reported on, and then you've got the status of the defect. So the defect at the moment is active, so it's currently ongoing. But you can actually have other statuses. So, for example, if it's fixed, the status could be closed. You could have something like it could be blocked. It could be a situation where you can't fix a defect because you're relying on something else. So there's different statuses you can actually set a defect to. And then finally, you've actually got this big body of text. Now, actually, the body of text is blank. This is actually a template I've created. It's something I use when I'm in testing, and it's very, very useful. And it's quite common actually to use because it kind of explains a lot about the defects. So when you basically this template, when you start off, you have the description. So a short description about the defect. And then you have the replication steps, so how can I actually reproduce this defect? And this is very important for a developer because they might want to see how you actually create the bug first before they can actually go into the code and fix it. So yeah, make sure you got a description, make sure you have your replication steps, and then you have your expected result. So how should the system actually behave? So as you can see here, login successful after and takes to the account page. So obviously, if we log in with valid credentials, the expected result is we should be able to log in successfully. While the actual result is what is basically the defect, what is happening now. So the login is unsuccessful with error message displayed stating unable to log in. And it's not included in the example report, but you can add other materials you can think of that's useful in reporting defects. Like you can attach a screenshot of the defect itself or even record a video of a defect, and that will just help make the diagnosis much easier. And then finally, we have lesson 5, which is intro into automation. Testing is a great career path. If you want to go further ahead into the testing market, then getting involved in automation testing is a great way to do so. But it's very important before you actually start going into automation and going slightly into the techie side to actually know the fundamentals of testing and its activities. And that's what we cover in lessons 3 and 4 first. So in this lesson breakdown, we'll look at the differences between behavior-driven development and test-driven development, which is also known as BDD and TDD. We'll look at the Gherkin language to help write your test scenarios in automation. And then we'll go through an example of structuring your automation. And this will make sense when you view the automation walkthrough video later on. So we're not going to go through the video because it is 38 minutes long. But I just wanted to showcase that we do have a video in our online course, as you can pretty much see here. If we go to lesson 5. So you go through the whole lessons and then you got a video, and we do have other media players as well. Like I mentioned in the IT support, we can actually listen to example call logs as well. So it's a very interactive sort of online course. But basically it's good that once you actually go through this lesson, you'll actually finish up on, well, this is basically the final slide of the whole course, which is the automation walkthrough. And it focuses on how to write an automation test where we want to process an invalid car registration plate. So basically, it's just a simple website. It only allows one valid registration plate, which is OV12UYY. But if we enter anything else, then we should display a no records found message after submission. So what this video shows is, okay, how do you actually automate that test? We can do it manually. We can just enter in any rubbish in the text box and just see if it comes with a message. But how can you actually automate that so that you don't have to keep doing that every single time in the future? You just click a button and the computer will actually do that test for you. And this automation walkthrough video will actually help you do that. Cool. So just to summarize the course, and I think it looks like we made some good timing. So yep, hopefully it was inspired by Lucy, IT professional software engineer at Hark. Hopefully you understand the knowledge of the foundation level of professional certification, how it actually will help you. Went through each lesson breakdown and some sample lessons so you know what to expect. And you understand our talent pool that complies with our train, certify, and employ. So you can order this foundation level IT professional certification course and exam bundle from our website. And it's only £40. Usually professional certifications or accredited certifications like ourselves is an accredited course. But usually when you try and go for one, they cost hundreds of pounds. We look at it as this is for people that's trying to get into their first role, people that might come from graduation. Hence why this is called, if you ever wonder why it says First Stride top corner, basically this course is part of our First Stride scheme. So First Stride is to help those make their first step towards something, whether it's a career change, whether it's from after graduation, after studies, things like that. But it's only £40, so it's really cheap and affordable, and you actually get yourself your online course, you'll get a practice exam, you get the actual exam as well. And I've provided a link here on the slide. It's the same link I provided in the chat earlier. So if you want to order it, click on the link, and then you just fill in your email address, complete your payment, and then you'll get an email confirmation. It'll have everything in that email. And then we've actually got an upcoming course coming up, which is the Introduction into Software Testing. So basically, this is understanding the fundamentals of testing and testing through the development lifecycle. So this actually delves deeper into testing. And it's for those who are certain that they want to go into software testing pretty much. So it's a great course. It's pretty much, it should be done, well, it'll be definitely ready by next month in June. So yeah, it's going to be the same price, £40, but we're actually going to provide a discounted value of £30 to those who actually are part of our mailing list. And it actually ties up nicely to the next slide. So what is our mailing list? So we'll be providing new courses in the near future. Customers in our mailing list have the following advantages. You'll be the first ones to access our new course to gain that head start from others, and you'll receive those promotional offers on our new courses. So if you want to be part of our mailing list, just send an email to us on comms@metis-online.com requesting to be part of our mailing list. You just send an email just to say, yeah, I want to be in the mailing list. We'll set up your email, and then our communications team will just hand over, well, basically we'll just send you a magazine email, which is usually once a month, and it will actually keep you updated on any new courses we have. And then finally, we have our own CV service as well. So, we want to help you stand out the crowd. We have so many professionals, myself, many others of my colleagues. We've hired many, many people before, many employees. So we know what a good CV and a bad CV looks like. So if you want to, have a very good job application and then have the certification to help support that, we can actually help with that as well. So if you feel like you need some CV help, it's on the website. Just go onto the website and you'll find more information about the CV service. And it's very simple. You just attach your CV, fill in some personal details, and then we'll actually sort out your CV for you. Cool. So that's the end of the course. So thank you very much. As you can see, we've got a website on here. So if you want to take any notes of these down, please do. We've got our website. Please recommend and share if you think, this course is good for anybody. If you think actually we like what Metis is doing and you want to recommend it to friends and family, please do. We're active in many different social media platforms. And finally, if you ever want to contact us, here's our contact email, contact@metis-online.com. I'll leave a slide up for a bit so you can actually note down some details if you want. But other than that, thank you very much for attending the course.